They reminded me that I was supposed to record the session. So I'm recording it now. Best I can do. We just missed the introduction. Okay, so this is a very important question, and that's why I'm asking you what you think the gospel is. And folks have all kinds of ideas based on their own, religious experience or reading or whatever about the gospel. And what we need to have is a much more complete understanding of the gospel, a much more complete understanding. Sometimes we think of it, just like you said, the Apostles' Creed, something like that, one of the creeds, I believe in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, blah, blah, blah. And, and the Holy Spirit, born of a virgin, died on the third day, died and was raised on the third day. You're supposed to memorize the creeds, So the creeds are an incomplete picture.
What's the gospel to the Jewish person? How does it relate to the Jewish person?
Well, you see, this is the part that's missing from the creeds. No, the creed is an incomplete picture.
Yeah, so what is it?
Well, I could sum it up in one phrase. Your God reigns. God is king. This is the big thing, which affects everything else that falls down below it about the human condition and human destiny. When God is king, what's our great prayer? The great prayer is the Elenu prayer, which says in the end, God will be the only one. That's when the victory is complete. So for
I think it's more described as the idea of gospel.
Well, even that is very incomplete. But tikkun olam can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. Return to the garden or whatever. To Gan Eden kind of a thing.
Something that we're supposed to be responsible for. But the gospel
No.
has to do with the Messiah, with what the Messiah has done, how we relate to the Messiah, and how he relates to us, why he is here. So how would you explain that in Jewish terms?
Well, again, I would start by look. We read a portion from Ezekiel in our Haftorah today, and that portion from that Haftorah from Ezekiel really is the eschatological hope of the Jewish people. In other words, this is where we want to. For the religious Jew, this is where we want to go. So Ezekiel was 37. In Ezekiel 37, toward the end.
My understanding of Ezekiel 37 is that's the eschatological hope of everyone who believes in Yisrael.
Well, ultimately, it can apply to everyone, but it is directed squarely at the Jewish people. Because remember what's going on prior to the end. It's about the two branches and it's how they've been separated, Ephraim but you're right. But then it says, "My servant David will be king over them." This is the united Israel. Israel, all of the Jewish people brought back into the land.
It was always my understanding.
Okay, and Messiah will be king over them. They'll have one shepherd and so on, and they'll live in the land that I gave to Jacob. And I will be their God, and they will be my people.
But that's the very end. That's when the Messiah returns. I mean more. What does the gospel mean?
What?
How do you define the gospel to the Jewish people right now? Before the Messiah returns, the first time he came, how do you define it?
Well, I define it the way I define it for myself, which is that in and through the Messiah Yeshua, I have I have this relationship with God. Let me put it to you this way. Let me say it to you in Rabbi Nachman's terms, this great rabbi who talked about devachut, okay? And devachut is this relationship, this what was it? God consciousness is what the word means. but this idea that I'm walking in the Spirit of God. God is with me all the time. And this is the highest achievement in Jewish spirituality. Okay? This is why you do the mitzvot. This is why you pray. This is why you do tzedakah. This is why you do all these things. It's to have this intimate relationship with God. Well, we have that in and through Messiah Yeshua, because the gift of God through Messiah, faith in Messiah, is the gift of the Holy Spirit, the one that was God's abiding presence in us that was promised. This is what the scripture teaches us. This is the gospel for now. But
that is the gospel to Jewish people. That's how you explain the gospel to Jewish people. That personal relationship. Because so many Jewish people believe in God and they pray, they daven. You know, they pray the prayers of the Siddur and they rant and right off, and they're saying it with all their heart, even though they're not even conscious of what they're saying. But they're saying it, believing that they're praying to a God who wants to hear their prayer the way they're praying. But what they're missing is that personal aspect of it. The fact that they're missing understanding that there is a God who loves them personally and who cares about them personally, and who has expectations of them, who wants to have intimacy with them, who wants to have a relationship with them. That's the heart of the gospel for the Jewish people.
I think, yeah, and I think in a lot of places God has been depersonalized.
Yeah.
He becomes conceptual rather than personal. And when that happens, you take the heart out of it. It has no meaning. So you fill it up with things like social justice or stuff like that, tikkun olam as it winds up getting defined. And tikkun, repairing the world without repairing our relationship with God is virtually meaningless.
I think the Jewish people need to understand that way, but others do too, because all people.
Jewish people are only typical of everybody else in this matter. No, this is not a unique problem for Jewish people, not by any stretch. But this portion in Ezekiel then is this eschatological hope that God is going to fulfill all of His promises that He made to Israel in the Hebrew Scriptures. A secure place, a home, a place among the nations, His abiding presence, most especially God's abiding presence in their midst. The resurrection, which is our hope for the future, that these bodies that rot will be done away with and will be given, our eternal state. All of these are the promises that are the eschatological hope of God, and this is the gospel. That God will reign over all of the creation, and the creation will be renewed. No longer will we have, in other words, this whole system that we have, the human system that we have created, which is based on death and lies and lack, will be undercut and be undone. You see, we live in this whole this world that we of our own creation that everybody sees. Look, I hate to be a harbinger of bad news, but all you have to do is read the newspaper any day, and you see that things are getting out of hand. The human condition, we no longer have the ability to even control the events that are occurring in the world today. They're out of people's hands at this point. So
if you look at chapter higher, chapter 36, from verse 25 to 27, it's actually gospel in the book of Ezekiel, and it's all three verses to describe the whole, actually the whole gospel is there.
36 verses what?
36, 25 to 27. Can you read it?
Yeah. It says, "Then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your filthiness and from all your idols. Moreover, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes. You will be careful to observe my ordinances. You will live in the land I gave to your forefathers. So you will be my people, and I will be your God."
Now, before when you described people doing mitzvah and in hope to have a relationship with the Spirit, this describes that you have a relationship with the Spirit and the mitzvah.
Right, their output rather than input. to the process.
I think that the way you said it, he reigns, that's really succinct. I mean, because it connects the first commandment, which then, of course, the Roman Empire is feeling undermined by that, because it's a unification of people in a different way.
A completely different way.
And so, of course, then the gospel is highly offensive. You know, then that wouldn't make complete sense.
Well, that's but that's why the gospel is offensive now. It's offensive in our own culture because it runs counterintuitively to the system we've created, the capitalist system we have. And listen, I'm not a communist or anything, but just, you know, what we're discovering in the modern world is that capitalism doesn't really work for everybody because, you know, that's why the rich are very rich and the poor are very poor. So there's something we got to modify, at least in the way we approach that system, that economic system. But just in terms of all of the things that, you know, we have created as values in the world are that which is undermining our very existence in the world. We're destroying the environment. We're just, you know, remember something. The curses of Adam and Eve in the garden were the destruction of Adam's image of himself, the destruction of Adam's relationship with God, the destruction of the sexes, of the relationship between the sexes, and the destruction of human beings from their very environment, right? All of these were the curses that were laid on as a result of disobedience. Well, guess what, people? We've created a system that's only exacerbating those problems. That's all it's doing. So the tikkun is, the gospel is the tikkun. The gospel is the repair of all of those things, all those relationships, of all of those things that need reparation to bring us back to a state where God can walk in the garden with us, and we can be content, and we can have life instead of death. This is the gospel. The gospel is a very comprehensive story about God's creation being restored. All right. So with that broader definition, rather than simply telling people, okay, you need to know Jesus, so when you die, you'll be in good shape, kind of thing, it's a much bigger picture, much more comprehensive in terms of life in this world and in the world to come. And that means that when he says participation in the gospel, understand the risk that these people were taking. That's why I was telling you about all the conditions in the world of Philippi. I want you to imagine yourself a citizen of Philippi, right? With all of these people, everybody's a stone cold patriot and a Caesar lover and all this other stuff, and they're all soldiers, so they probably have a little violent streak in them a little bit, and and you're going to come in there and try to subvert, everything they fought for. Maybe some of them lost limbs over it, or lost loved ones. And here you are coming in with a story that completely undercuts all of that. Think about what it means to be a participant in the gospel, even though you know it's true. It takes courage.
Would it mean then that the gospel, when he says to share the gospel, is just to share that God exists?
Well, it's not just to show that God exists, because first of all, that's an unprovable statement. Because unless you can produce God, I'm talking about empirically, strictly empirical. Unless you get God to come down, show up. Hi, this is God. Yeah, Judy, here's God. Now she's got irrefutable proof. I mean, you're not going to do it. It's there's a reason why it requires trust and faith. No man has seen God at any time. We have the faithful testimony of those who interacted through the centuries. We all have personal experiences. I just shared a personal experience, right? I gave that money back to the congregation, and all of a sudden these people show up with a check with the same amount. Come on. You can interpret that any way you want. I know how I'm interpreting it. I was 17 years old at the time. That happened 45, 50 years ago. I mean, why would I know that it would show up now? Now. So we all have our experiences. I don't have to have God prove to me because I have all the proof I need, as far as I'm concerned. But but I'm talking about these people now who remember something. What they have is Paul's preaching. They have Paul. Maybe they saw Paul cast out that demon. And it doesn't, in the book of Acts at least, it doesn't record that he did anything. He personally did anything else miraculous, other than he walked out of that jail cell. I mean, he didn't do that though. God did that, right? So they only had his word and the hope that they had in them. And for them, it's a big deal. See, if they were just a bunch of Jews, let's say it was a Jewish group, a whole group is just Jewish. Well, then the authorities would just say, it's the Jews, and their craziness with their gods, or God or whatever. And they would have left, and it would have been nothing. It really would have been nothing. It's the notion that now Roman citizens are taking up this mantle, and they're becoming subversive in the culture in which they live, that it becomes a real issue. Mm-hmm. So that their participation in the gospel, now they realize that this whole Roman thing that they understood all of their lives, it's all a lie. It's false. It's destined for failure. It's destined to be destroyed. And now, but the gospel is going to reign. God is king. Now that's a major thing. And can we, in our own time, in our own 21st century, have that kind of willingness to say, the culture we live in is just not it. And we are going to live lives that are a reflection of the gospel, mm-hmm. of this notion that the world we are going to be the tikkun for the world. And we're going to be testimony to that tikkun. This is their participation. They're participating because the world around them, the rest of that city, sees this community and how they're acting, how they're taking care of each other, how they're not just self-seeking, and all the other good things that Paul's going to say about that. It's their whole life. It's the whole life of that community that makes the difference in a world where they become a threat by the virtue of who they are. I mean, do we have the same willingness to be that kind of testimony, so that wherever we go, people say, hey, there's something about what I may not agree with them, but there's something going on. And this is when we get back into Paul's admonition to them, and he says to them, I'm grateful about your, how he puts it, in view of your participation in the gospel from the first day until now. How they participated with him in the good news, in living out the good news. That their whole lives are a testimony. It's not just being able to say all the right words to somebody and logically defend your argument. If you're into that, fine, knock yourself out. But it's about the life that we live, that qualitatively, mm-hmm. the kind of people we are is evident to the people around us. How much different are we than our neighbors, considering our neighbors are just normal folks? Do we stand out in that way because we're this full reflection of the life of Messiah Yisrael? That's the gospel. Okay? And I realize I'm saying a big thing, and so does Paul. That's why he says that he who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Messiah. It's a big thing, and none of us are capable of doing the whole thing on our own. We have to be able to yield to the Spirit of God in our lives, day after day after day, to become this reflection of the good news. One of the things that always troubles me, even in our culture today, is that why isn't the body of Messiah a more attractive thing to people? I wonder. You know, I mean, I'm sure we can all come up with interesting reasons. I can certainly come up with some of my own. But I think the major thing is that the people of God do not reflect anything that people want. You know what I mean? You know, this is our problem. You know, I remember years ago, right? I was in a meeting. This was a Promise Keepers meeting, and they were going to do a Promise Keepers thing in New York City. And there was a Jewish guy who was now working for Coach McCartney, and he was trying to rally the Messianic Jewish community in the metropolitan area to participate in the in Promise Keepers. Now, Promise Keepers, in my opinion, did a lot of good. I mean, it really did help a lot of people. And Coach McCartney was a very nice man. I met him personally a few times, and he was a pretty good guy. I have nothing bad to say about him. But at this meeting, like, I'm a wise guy. I'm from the Bronx, you know, and we're just wise guys, and we always have to come up with some stupid crack. And so this young man was talking about provoking the Jewish people to jealousy. You know, it says that in the scriptures, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So I, you know, my wise acre way, you know, I just said to him, I said, man, let me explain something to you. The only thing you guys have ever provoked the Jewish people to is anger. So, like, don't give me that you're going to provoke them to jealousy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, the body of Messiah needs to come up with another way to provoke people to jealousy. Mm-hmm. And the way we do that is the way that first century community did it. That, you know, it says they had all things in common. They were sharing, and there was no want among the people. They took care of each other. And they were growing in the grace of the people. Day by day, God is adding to their number of those who were being saved. There was something so special about that early Christian community, that early believing community in Israel, that was so compelling that people were jumping on it and wanted to know more about it. That's what I call a participation in the gospel. When we can manage to do that, because we haven't been doing that recently in the body. You know, that people have so many complaints about so many different things, so many goofy things that are going on. The fact that people who call themselves believers are no much better than anybody else in terms of their ethical behavior, their moral behavior, their, you know, divorce rates, anything like, you know, name the, you know, drug problems, whatever, and there ought to be a difference. Mm-hmm. There really ought to be a difference, you know, that we have a better answer for the vicissitudes of life than average folk, because of the advantage we have in knowing God. If and when we can get to that, then we will be a real powerful force in the world. Until then, I think we're going to have problems. You know, it's as simple as that, really. And so what are we going to do about it? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to learn what that means to be participants in the gospel. And then, as Paul recommends to us, we're going to allow God to finish his work in us, which he will perfect in the day of Messiah. That's what's going to happen, right? Right?
Right.
Are we all, can I hear it? Get an amen from the congregation. Amen. That's why studying the Word of God means so much to me. Because it's through the Word and then doing what the Word says that we can manage to figure out what exactly it is that this is all really about. There is no other way. I mean, it'd be great if, you know, I was sitting in some dark room contemplating my navel, and, you know, God hit me with the whole thing without any need to understand the Word. But I don't know anybody that's ever happened to.
It doesn't make a feeling to them because they don't want to give up their sins.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
But listen, I believe that if we presented things appropriately and offered a greater alternative. See, instead of condemning everybody, look at
That's why
Yeshua.
the 60s was so good. It could have been-
Think about Yeshua and the way he operated in life. He never condemned sinners. Yeah, he meets a person in sin. You know, he says, "Listen, man, that's not good for you. Don't do that. Let me show you something else." You know, that instead of sitting here, you know, like, you know, people who want to get on a moral, soapbox. Thank you, and just, you know, lay into everybody and tell them all how rotten they are and what's wrong with them. That's going to appeal to virtually no one. Okay. On the other hand, if we do what Messiah Yeshua does, was encourage people, care about them, you know, say, hey, you know, walk up to them and give them a hug and say, hey, you know, what can I do for you?
Even more than that, they should be drawn to us. Instead of having long faces, we should have the joy of the Lord in us. There should be something in us that draws them to us and wants to know what is going on
just like
in
the
your
story that we
life.
heard earlier
Why
today.
are you always so happy?
Tell us that we can to do stuff is like works, right? But to be something is different. So to be the fruit of the spirit, to be joy, peace,
Yes,
patience,
and
love,
then
and
sometimes
that takes
it's drawing, and
practice,
sometimes
but
you
it's
get slack
interchange.
for it. Like they want to make you miserable just to see what you're going to do about it. Do you understand what I'm saying? I face that a lot.
Well, you know, there are always going to be people.
They don't win, but
We're always look, ladies and gentlemen. We're always going to face adversity. Being a believer in Messiah Yeshua does not protect us from difficulty.
That's right. That's for sure.
It didn't protect these people from difficulty in Philippi. It's how we react to that, to the difficulties in life. What are we going to do in reaction to that when the adversity comes, when somebody gets in your face, or somebody's treating you poorly, or some bad, you know, situation occurs for you? You get a bad diagnosis, or, you know, something else happens in life. You lose your job, or whatever it might be. Everybody's going to face those things. The question is, what do we do in the face of those things that makes the difference between us and others? And if we live in hope, if we live in the knowledge of God's care for us, remember that portion I read for you today, which was quoted out of that little meditation. You know, remember the plans I have for you, for your good. And if we live with that, you know, day by day by day, then we can make a difference in the lives of people. But if we walk around moping like everybody else is, in this environment, and everybody has, you know, good reasons. If you don't have God on your side, you have a good reason to be moping right now.
That's right.
You know.
Yeah.
So, how are we going to be different? How are we going to react to the circumstances of our lives? This is the gospel. The gospel is us. In a real way, we are the gospel. What does God do? If God is about renewing the entire creation, aren't we the first part of that renewal? We're supposed to be a reflection as a community and as individuals of the renewal of God's creation.
Well, like what they said, our relationship with the Lord, our individual relationship. It's not just coming to Shabbat, but every single day of our lives with the Lord. And when we're, like you talked about, commitment, when we're serious about our commitment to the Lord in our relationship, that's going to show in our actions.
I think we'll leave it there. It's almost 3:30. Okay. So next week, I'll make sure you get the notes for the next class here. I apologize for that. And we'll definitely, you guys got to remind me to record these things. Terrible. All right. I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you, everybody.